No,
That'd be like a nice commute.
yeah, it's
Do it
easy.
again.
What is it, like 20-25 minutes?
An hour
Well,
from the side, like getting his cross in.
Yeah.
No, I can use a hammer, just wanted to get some order and order, start, that's it, sorry.
Oh,
So I have to start with that.
oh, we're starting with house, the ED.
Wonderful. Okay, where's Jack? Great. Is everyone here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are we, who else are we missing from Waterloo?
Russo.
Director Russo, Director Russo, are you on the phone? Can you just
Yeah,
confirm
I'm
that it's
here.
you? Wonderful, thank you. And that's it. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that the Wilfrid Laurier University Students' Union operates on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. As an organization, we seek to conduct our business in a manner that does not have any conflict. One regret for us this evening, Director Mahari has a conflict and will not be attending. I'd like to motion that the Board of Directors adopt the agenda as presented with 2 different modifications. The first being a report by the President to be added after the Conestoga brief, and then an in-camera session at the end of the February schedule discussion. Can I get a seconder on the motion? Director Phillips, any discussion or questions on the motion as presented? Okay, as I see none, we'll move into voting. Any opposition? Any abstention? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes 0-0 to 11. Thank you. On to the adoption of the minutes. Can I get a mover on the motion that the Board of Directors adopt the minutes of the January 22nd, 2024, Vice Chair Rubinoff, seconded by Director Ellis. Any comments, concerns on the minutes as presented? Okay, I'd just like to thank our board secretary for her good, for a very well done minutes. We will now move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes 0-0 to 11. On to campus safety from our guests of the board. AVP Oliver, you have the floor.
It was very efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Vanessa Oliver, for those of you I haven't met officially yet. I use she, her pronouns, and I am in the AVP EDI role for 5 more months. I was just saying to Meg, and we're right now in the process. I think we're down to 4 candidates, so soon there will be a new AVP EDI, likely starting July 1st, and until then, it's me, and it's been me the last 9 months. And when I'm not in this role, I'm on the Brantford campus. Hello, Brantford folks, in the Youth and Children's Studies program and the Social Justice and Community Engagement graduate program. So Meg had given me a bit of an overview of what folks were hoping to discuss, but I wanted to know if there was anything in particular that you're hoping I would touch on while I'm here with you.
Please give us your presentation in a while. I'm sure our board will ask you questions that they find interesting.
Okay. So I guess what I wanted to start by talking about is study. So the Center for Student Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, where we were when I started the job in May, was basically flailing a bit. As you probably all know, Lauren Burrows left us for UW at the same time. Dr. Barrington Walker, who was in my role previously, went to McMaster. So we sort of lost our anchors around the same time, and we have been working with folks to Meg in particular, and Ellen and Phil and Taylor to revamp the CE study and restructure the CE study in a really intentional way so that we can sort of get around some of the barriers that you've seen in previous years with folks sort of burning out, not being well supported enough. And so in that rebuild structure, we now have Humira Javid in the permanent manager role. So she's here on the Waterloo campus, and then we have Fiza Iqbal, who is now in the permanent EIC role on the Brantford campus, Education and Inclusion Coordinator role. So those are our go-to folks in terms of the student equity space. And then I sort of oversee student equity, which is one arm of our portfolio. The other one is academic equity, which is more the faculty and staff side. And then the third arm is the Office
Why
of
were those
Human
old
Rights and
ladies
Public.
beating each other up over a blender? It's Boxing Day. What's Boxing Day? Does everybody fight here on that?
Are you able to mute?
Sounds more exciting than what I'm talking about too. Okay. No worries. So yeah, Office of Human Rights and Conflict Management, that's where I was. And so what I wanted to talk about today in terms of the specific case that I know Meg mentioned, which was a Brantford campus specific case around a student who wanted to be wearing niqab and didn't feel safe to be doing so on the Brantford campus. Does that sort of situate the discussion? Okay, so what we've seen since October 7th, as you all know, we've seen a rise in anti-Semitism, in Islamophobia, in anti-Palestinian racism, and those things, we're seeing them across campuses and of course across the broader society. So we've had a lot of really great student advocacy, especially from the Muslim Students Association, both on Brantford and Waterloo campuses. And as a result of their advocacy, we've really been able to implement a number of programming changes. And there are a few things that I was thinking, hopefully you folks could help us with too, especially in terms of so I think what we've been trying to do is frame the safety conversation around both prevention and response. So the response pieces in some ways are easier, right? When there's an incident, we have a particular set of protocols that we follow. But really what we need to be focusing on more is the prevention side, which is the cultural shift side. As we know, that's a much more difficult sort of beast to tame. In terms of the response side, we were able to set up in light of the MSA's letter to Dr. McClatchy, where they talked about, in particular, female Muslim students having their hijabs pulled on their way to campus and on campus. They, in specific, asked for particular window classes, which we've been able to provide on the prevention side. We've also been offering group sessions that continue to be offered through CSETI, and we would really encourage folks to be telling folks that CSETI is a great spot to go to be triaged into, regardless of where you are, what sort of discrimination or harassment folks might be dealing with. In terms of anti-Semitism, Hillel has asked us to triage most of the Jewish students into their supports, and they have a large community outreach. In terms of anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia, we've been doing more of that work internally within CSETI. So one of the things that we offer there are group sessions for folks who are feeling impacted. And then Adam and your good folks have offered to pay for individual sessions for folks who would really like to be meeting with a counselor who shares their at least their faith community, but for Palestinian students, if they prefer to see Palestinian counselors and therapists, we've been able to have that in student care support.
Did you say the name of that program is just, you said CSETI?
Oh, sorry, CSETI, so the Center for Student Equity, Diversity and Inclusion. I'm sorry, I use so many acronyms
Wasn't
now.
familiar with that one.
Yes, that's the one. And importantly, the two names that are associated with that on the Waterloo campus right now are Humira Javid, and on the Brantford campus, Fiza Iqbal. And so the student in particular, I'm not sure which of you that student reported their situation to, but I would really encourage, if you have contact with that student, to connect them with Fiza, who's been doing a lot of really good one-on-one supports in particular with the Muslim community, linking into the mosque and the imam in Brantford. We also have Furqan Mirza, who's one of the special constable officers on the Brantford campus, who is Muslim himself and has an investment in the Muslim community there, and it can really be of help and support for students who are feeling the way that the particular student who made that complaint to you.
Yeah, Director Baldwin, if you could, please take note of the discussion that's been, that we've just had, and please make sure to, send the message along to the student that you've had a discussion with. That would be greatly appreciated.
And you can connect that student into VISA, you can connect them directly to my office as well, wherever they feel most comfortable. What else? We've been working with the multi-faith chaplains a lot during this time too. So Rabbi Goldman is on this campus and Dr. Selvas is on this campus as well. And those folks have been really good supports for students as well, and have facilitated a lot of community outreach, a lot of interfaith dialogue too, which has been really important. Event planning for students, as you folks know, going through the event planning process with SHRM, the acronym.
It's the risk management,
Yes.
safety, health, and
Environment.
risk management, yeah.
So we've been working closely with SHRM, that group, and they work with special constable services as well as student EDI to try and create event spaces that are safer and more de-escalated. Well, we've been in this period between October 7th and now. And we always encourage folks to use that process as much as possible around event planning. At Brantford, of course, folks in Brantford know, I think it's not a surprise to any of us. Like I said, that's my home campus. The policing between SDS and between the Brantford Police Services is tricky because of the way that Brantford is set up. Of course, in Waterloo, we have a more contained space, whereas as we all know, in Brantford, it's all one big mishmash. And I think that the student, Meg, that you were talking about had said that the sense was on Waterloo campus, there was maybe more of a sense of safety for visibly Muslim folks, and that maybe wasn't so much the case in Brantford. And I can see how that happens because of the way that Brantford is structured, and it's been an ongoing piece of work for the 10 years that I've been at Brantford, for sure, of trying to figure out what the best way is to create that sort of sense of collective care within the Laurier community and then within the larger Brantford community. And I think it's a challenge that we still have, but we have some pretty amazing special constable's office folks over there, and Furqan is certainly one of them. So I would encourage folks, if it's desirable, that we could actually have a meeting with SES, Constable Eldred on this campus and Constable Mirza on the Brantford campus would be totally open to meeting with students or with you folks to talk about how we might be using the special constable services more effectively in support of students who are experiencing, in particular, equity-based discrimination.
For sure, I feel like, please let me know if this idea works well for you. The vice chair here is from Waterloo, I'm from Brantford. If we're to have like different sessions, one in Brantford, I can coordinate the one in Brantford, he can coordinate the one in Waterloo between the Waterloo directors and special constables, and I can coordinate the one between the Brantford special constables and then the Brantford directors, because I know at least on the Brantford campus, with it being a European style campus in a city that has its challenges, there's definitely that equity piece in the feelings of safety or not.
Yes.
And this is something that we've explored in our campus safety committee at the board, currently being led by currently being chaired by Director Corey in the Brantford campus, where we've talked to students there, and there's definitely a discussion around, you know, overrepresentation of minorities and feelings of being not safe in downtown Vancouver. So, what do you think about this approach, having one in Waterloo, one in
I
Brantford?
think it's a great idea, for sure, and I think the needs are very different, and we're sort of even hearing that between the two Muslim student associations. That they work closely together, so I
I'm,
love to.
I'm very familiar with both Furqan and, Oscar, so, I have a good understanding of how the needs are different on both campus.
Yeah.
How would you like us to coordinate these two discussions?
Why don't we do it through my office, does that work?
Uh,
Or easier to reach out to SES independently? I know both Ryan and Furqan have talked about having these meetings. We've just been wondering what the right timing is, so they're already aware that that request might be coming.
Executive Director Phil, Champagne, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest that the board should kind of make a discussion and make that motion to do that.
Okay, can I get a motion that the board, wait, let me read it out. Can I get a motion that the board, host meetings with special constables on the Waterloo and the Brantford campus separately in coordination with AVP Oliver? Director Phillips, seconded by Director Baldwin. Any discussion on, let's continue the discussion on the discussion and we'll vote on the motion. Do you feel like that would be a good discussion? And then I'll appoint the vice chair in charge of leading the Waterloo discussion. And then, Director Ellis, you had a comment?
Sorry, it's me. Just the camera doesn't wanna, oh, there I am. I'm wondering if that might be if kind of that one-to-one conversation might be a better idea to take back to committee. And then kind of do the facilitation from there, and that way we're not, planning between kind of all these different people. We can kind of come up with a unified strategy and then present that individually.
So that's a pretty good idea. Our campus safety committee meets next Monday at this time.
That's the plan, yeah.
Yes, so. Okay. How do we vote? Do we vote?
So what was the result of that discussion?
So do you not want to reach out, do you not want the motion to pass? Is that what you're saying?
No, that, I agree with the motion, kind of, my point there is just, instead of having that as a full board level conversation, it might be worth taking the conversation back to committee, so pass the motion and then just kind of add in that, like, we could take it as a committee, and then between us and AVP Oliver, kind of come up with the specifics around that.
Yeah, can you propose an amendment to the motion that we bring it to committee and then, or bring it to the committee, amend the motion, and then we'll vote on it a second time. Can you propose that motion, please?
Yeah, I'll propose the motion that the conversation kind of, the conversation between board and AVP Oliver goes to the campus safety committee, and then specifics are delivered to the board after consultation.
Okay, seconded by Director Phillips. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, we'll go into voting. Any opposition to the amendment? Any abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passed, and the amendment passes 0-0 to 11. So I guess what will happen is that we will meet as a committee and then we'll coordinate with you as to how we're gonna facilitate these sessions, either as a committee or as a full board. That will be determined. Director Sloan? Oh, okay.
Apologies.
So, we will now go into voting on the amended motion that we'll coordinate as a committee. Any opposition, any last comments on the amended motion? Okay, any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes, then the amended motion passes 0-0 to 11. So our committee chair will get in contact with you next Monday after our campus safety committee. I guess one more thing that I wanted to add, does anybody else have a question for AVP Oliver?
I have a question, it's not about the safety
Okay.
stuff, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
The new space
Yes,
here on the Waterloo campus.
yes. It's almost there, for
Do you
real.
have any kind of an update as to when you'll have
Yeah,
occupancy?
they're still telling us reading week that we should be able to move in right after reading week.
Okay.
And we did, right after reading week. I know.
Before I left for Argentina, they told me that January,
They,
now we're in February. So
we have,
it's like,
we have done the walkthrough, so I can say I've seen it and
Okay.
it's almost there.
Okay,
And
great.
it was on, that was 2 weeks ago that I saw it, and they just had a few ceiling tiles to go, so it really does seem,
And you have doors?
thank you, well, this was what the holdup was.
Okay.
Was that one door is still on back order. And it's the door to one of the collective spaces, the Black Student Collective Space. However, they are jerry-rigging a door while we're waiting for this door to be ordered so that we can actually open the space and get folks into it.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know if I know, do you mind explaining what this space is and where it would be?
yes, so it's new, so this study, as we call it, this Center for Student Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion has been in Mac House for as long as I can remember, Phil. I don't
Yeah,
know
like
if it
15
started
years,
there.
something like that?
Yeah, I've been there
Welcome to
before.
Base.
Yeah, it's just, no, it's
It's-
just
it's
like,
like-
you walk past it every time. you
Yeah.
go there, Yeah,
It's tiny.
It's tiny and it's
1960s.
got bad vibes in there. I don't know how else to say it. I don't like the vibes in there, but then the vibes are good.
It's
In the
definitely
new
got 1960s mojo,
space, It does,
Okay.
and not the good 1960s, the bad
right, not the Austin
1960s.
Powers.
Yeah.
no,
So
that's-
the renovations are just completely down.
Yeah, so the renovations are, so it's, do you know where the Office of Human Rights and Conflict Management is in the arts wing? How do we do?
So it's, if you're on the Waterloo campus and you're in the concourse and you're walking down the left-hand side towards the arts building, instead of going right towards 1E1, you turn left down that hallway. The Office of Human Rights is the first set of doors on your right. The Center for Student Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion will be at the end of that hallway, largely on the left, but also with offices on the right-hand side. So it'll be at the end of the hallway on the first floor of the arts building.
Okay. What are some of the big initiatives in order to improve the Indigenous representation on the Brantford campus? That's something that has been actually a priority for me, and I want to.
We can, I mean, we do a very two-row approach to EDI and I, so Darren Thomas, you should have him to your meeting and ask him, but in terms of, I mean, the renovations have been finished at the Indigenous Student Center there. And it looks amazing compared to what it looked like the last time I was there. But I totally agree with you that given the proximity of Six Nations, we should have more representation than we do. And the big mural in the parking lot there, we're hoping to create something with One Market. They're thinking about taking that wall down. So we're now in the process of trying to figure out how do we preserve that big piece of public art that's on that wall. So folks have any ideas?
I don't know about you, but I love that mural.
Yes.
So any effort to get rid of that mural is a big problem for me. And,
I live very close near to it, and I see it, and it's beautiful,
So-
especially since it's so gloomy and
Exactly, right in
cool
the,
yeah,
downtown.
kind of opened the door for me now. So sorry, who's making that decision?
oh, it's part of the One Market vision for the future.
Okay. I already know who to talk to. Come on.
Okay, thank you.
Make sure we preserve that.
Uh,
But yeah, I think Dr. Thomas would have some more ideas about
Okay.
what they're planning on the Indigenous initiative side of things, but I'd love to
right.
have those conversations.
I know that recently there has been an incident regarding, an elder.
Yes.
Can you share more?
I think so. Yeah, so there was an investigation, about 2 weeks ago. It's been a long-running investigation where it was determined that, the Indigenous elder in residence in the Indigenous field of studies may not in fact, be Indigenous based on their genealogy and verification process. And so as you may know, when Darren became the AVP of Indigenous Initiatives, he put in an Indigenous identity verification process. And the current faculty at Laurier were sort of grandparented in, and they didn't actually go through the verification process. So now that person is going through the verification process. So that person has been put on administrative leave while Dr. Thomas is running the verification process. So we're not sure what the outcome of that process will be yet, but
Would you be able to kind of shed some light as to how, what that process looks like? Is it, what is it?
yeah, I mean, it's a process that's been determined by the community. And so I think there are a number of different ways that folks verify their identity, but by and large, it's, being, having a particular community that says, you belong to us, we're part of the same community. And then Darren has gone through, so for example, when we hired in the Indigenous Excellence hires, there were the 6 Indigenous faculty hired. Every single one of those people had to go through this vetting process where they had to put forward who basically the people in their community are, they claim them. And then Darren reaches out to that community and makes sure that that community, that person is accountable to the community they say they're from.
Right, so just a follow-up question. I'm like, and I mean no offense by this, but it's not as simple as like seeing if somebody has a status card.
No.
Okay.
And I think that's what they're trying to get away from with that
Right.
process, is trying to create an accountability that's more community driven and community oriented than
Right,
the sort of colonial model of the status card that you speak to.
because like, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but like, not all Indigenous people are eligible for a status card for a variety of historical reasons and legal amendments. So like somebody could actually be Indigenous without having a status card and vice versa too?
Yeah. It's a complicated process, but Darren, I will admit, would be much better at explaining than I am, but as somebody who's worked, I used to chair the Indigenous Studies program when I was on Brantford campus, so I have some familiarity, but Dr. Thomas could really give you the ins and outs of the process.
And once again, for my ignorance
No.
once as well, how would a situation like what you described with the current elder have transpired previously, even without maybe the standard checks that we do right now, but how would they have been in a position in the first place to have, potentially not necessarily been qualified?
Yeah, it's a good question, and this particular person has done work in the community for 30, 40 years, so it's a pretty big ripple effect right now of folks who again, I think the verification process needs to happen, so I don't want to speak too much, but what it looks like from the report is that this person might have been a white person who was adopted into an Indigenous community at a young age, and so it gets complicated about, how does Indigenous identity work? Like, if you're adopted into the community, even if technically you're biologically white, does that count? Does it not count? And me as a white person, I don't get to say, but I think Darren in the Indigenous communities will make
And
that
there's
determination.
a high profile similar case with Buffy
Buffy
St.
St.
Marie,
Marie, it's
right?
almost identical,
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
very, very similar, yeah.
Yeah. All right, any more questions for AVP Oliver? Okay, I guess I'll round off with one last one. Oh, Director Corey, go ahead.
Sorry, it's not so much a question, more of a statement. I just kind of wanted to extend my congratulations to the CSETI team on bringing Fizza on board on the Brantford campus, and just pass on some feedback that I've been hearing a lot. She's, from what I've heard from students, she's been making a really great contribution to the team, and I'm only hearing good things about her, so I just wanted to pass that along.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I know she was yours before she was ours.
Yeah, he's working so
And
For context, Fizza left the C team to work for Society, but definitely the best move for her.
Yeah,
As-
and for us,
There's that
she's
to go,
she's
but-
amazing, and
Yeah.
it's so good that she has relationships with people.
I'd like to like echo Director Corey's comments, as I've personally worked with Fizza on multiple different things, and I know that she is definitely a great asset to have on the team. And especially in anything in regards to the MSA, she's always been on point.
Yes.
So, I guess my last question for you is, what can we do as a board, but also as an organization to support your work in improving DEI outcomes of students?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that we had talked about, Fizza, Humira and I, thinking about the particular student concern in Brantford, was how we could work with you folks to maybe do some more specific bystander training around, in particular, Islamophobia. This is something that's coming up in Brantford a lot because of that collective care model that we're trying to put into place. Often it's the allies in the space that can intervene in different ways, especially, I think in the Brantford community, there are, the way power differential works, sometimes it's somebody who's not from the community that's being discriminated against that can have some impact. So we would love if there was space and time for us to do a bit more specific bystander training to students, particularly on Brantford. We'd love to be able to work with folks on that if there is the capacity. And then we're getting into transitions and leadership and
Are you talking more about like the student union volunteers on the ground?
it would be great.
President Spendler, would that be something that your staff would be interested in, pushing or maybe even making that training mandatory for the volunteers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can connect in with Sarah, but I can be more applicable and something. Yeah, I don't see that being a problem at all.
Okay, so I think you have a verbal commitment that you will work out something for our volunteers in order to improve the safety. All right, I'd like to, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your wonderful presentation. Thank you for coming so late in the night. We appreciate that for
We're
sure.
here for a lot longer.
Um,
Take up more of your time.
We certainly appreciate it. And again, if you have anything on your wish list that you'd like, this current board to help you or next year's board to help you, please feel free to reach out to either Megan or I, and we'll make sure to, even if it's something in relation to transition, I'm sure we can work out something to make sure that some of this learned knowledge that we now have transitions on to next year's board as well.
Okay, thank you again for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you. And let me know, like, reach out anytime we're in 202 Regina, and we don't ever see any students, so coming over here is always nice. To see the folks that we care about the most.
Likewise. And then again, thank you again for coming here and
My pleasure, and thank you for funding the Sea Study space. It's going to be beautiful, Phil, when we see it in 2 weeks' time.
Can't wait.
Totally finished.
Do-
There's
do-
furniture.
do we get to like have do you get to have a follow up for that, Phil?
We're gonna do a launch.
I would definitely defer that to Megan to be a part of that photo op, if there is a photo op, but yeah, I'm just excited to see it. Cause that was voted on by students. I wanna say like 4 years ago. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
It's been a minute, so
Yeah.
I'm really excited and happy for you guys to finally get out of Mac House, so.
That's true.
Wonderful.
Spaces are right in you.
It's the first floor of the arts building?
Yeah.
So what feels kind of basement.
That's right, yeah. Yep,
All right.
so it's basically, there's a computer lab that was in there, it's the computer lab.
Oh, cool.
So that computer lab's been completely gutted and turned in, yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a good night.
Safe drive.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
All right, on to the fall term finance report by DFA Turner. You have the floor.
Hi, good evening, everyone. In your package, I'll share it on the screen. Can someone turn screen sharing on?
It's okay, Chris, Orland has it up. Oh, wait, you have to reach over there.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of jump around a bit from the order that it's included in the package, so you'll just have to bear with me. I've included some new documents this time at the request of the board, and we'll go through those as well. So what I'd like to start with is the statement of financial position, or the balance sheet as it used to be called. And that one, just let me know when it's up on the screen. So this just shows our mix of assets and liabilities at December 31st. So the report that I'm bringing to you tonight is to the end of December, which is 8 months into our fiscal year. So you'll see we've got a strong current asset position currently, over 4 million cash.
Chris,
Yes,
nobody can see it. Oh,
pardon?
we can't see the statements.
Wait, if you, it's in the package, if you.
I
scroll
I
down-
thought you said they were on the screen there.
Oh, yeah, so the people that are remote, are you gonna share the screen, Orland?
I can, I gave Chris the ability to share the screen.
Chris, you should be able to share, just share your screen.
Okay,
Why don't we share our screen?
all right.
It's easier for him to do it because he can, then everybody sees it and then he can scroll through it as he's talking about it. For sure. All right.
Okay, let me know when you can see it.
All good.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is a statement of financial position at December 31st, 2023. So if you look at our current assets, which is made up of cash, accounts receivable, short-term investments, and a couple other smaller things, inventories and prepaid expenses, we have over $7 million in current assets. The short-term investments are money that we've set aside into GICs of varying maturity dates. The total assets is 11.2 million. And on the liabilities and funds side, you'll see our current liabilities total 4.6 million. It's made up of accounts payable, deferred revenue, campus clubs, funds that we're responsible for. And you can see our long-term debt and deferred capital contributions as well. So the current assets, for those of you that have a finance background, if you look at a current ratio perspective, we're in a pretty good solid position with lots of cash on hand to meet any type of short-term obligations. So that's the statement of financial position. I'll scroll up and look at, or no, maybe I'm scrolling down here to look at our statement of revenue. So for the 8 periods ending December 31st, we have total revenue of 5.936 million against a budget of 6.048 million. So so by a little bit, 112,000. Mostly it's a timing issue. If you look at the health and dental line, you'll see we've recorded revenues of 2.2 million against a budget of 2.4 million. Our budget included revenues for the fall term that we thought we were going to get in December, but it's actually didn't show up on the books until January. So that's another $270,000 related to the fall term. So good position there. The biggest one obviously is health and dental. Then the Fred Nichols Campus Center fee, followed by all the other fees of about $993,000 and Wilf's revenue of about $811,000. So keep that number in mind. Total actual revenues of 5.9 million. We'll flip to the statement of expenses. So these are our expenses to the same period in time, the end of December. Total expenses of 5.992 million against a budget of 7.449 million. So we're significantly under the budget on the expense side. Again, primarily related to the health and dental portfolio. Claims are not to the level that we budgeted them, and claims on our student health and dental plan continue to lag where we thought they'd be at this point in time. And that's the main contributor to us being under budget. Same on the Fred Nichols Campus Center side. We're about $300,000 under that budget as well. And that budget holds all our utility costs, custodial costs, maintenance costs, and the surplus there is largely driven by maintenance costs that we haven't incurred, knock on wood, year to date. So that's good. So total expenses of 5,992. Then we'll look at our statement of operations. So this brings the revenues together with the expenses. So as we've already looked at, we have total revenues of 5,936, total expenses of 5,992. So we're in a very small deficit position at the end of December of $56,000. And if you recall, when I brought financial statements to you earlier in the year, and at that point in time, we had a deficit in, I forget the exact number, 800,000 or 900,000 maybe at that point in time. So we're moving towards a balanced budget. I think when I went back and looked at the statement of operations for the same period last year, where we have a $56,000 deficit, last year we had a $150,000 deficit. So pretty similar. And based on that number, I'm kind of forecasting we'll be in a nice surplus position by the end of the year. So that's good. The next statement I wanted to look at was a new one that I've included as well, which is a statement of cash flows. So this just looks at me and taking a look at the cash we have available for operations. And I've forecasted that out to July of 2024. So you'll see where we are on this graph right now, early into February, it's kind of at the low point. And then you'll see that big spike up over to $6 million. That happens every year when we get funding for the winter term. We'll get in the next few weeks, actually, in this month, we'll get about, little over $3 million for the winter term. And then we'll draw down on that money. There's another little spike you see in and around May. And that reflects the funding, the small funding we'll get for the spring term. And that will continue to draw down until next fall when we get funding for the fall semester. So our cash flow is never even or level. It's always a bunch of spikes based on the time of year that we receive money from our fees. So nothing unusual here. Again, we're in a good position cash-wise. And this is just, as I said before, this is just our cash position for operating. I've backed out any money that we have in reserves or investments, because I just wanted to make sure that I can track money that we have to pay for our current obligations and not confuse it by adding in money that we're supposed to hold in reserves. So that's a new document I've added. Another one, I've got a couple of projection or tables in here that look at student enrollment. So this first one is enrollment as of fall 2022, so a year ago. And there's a number out here at the end here in this blue column in the middle that's total undergrad. Enrollment was 19,914. And the next, I don't see it here. Doesn't appear to, there's another table that shows, it's the same table. I've got it on paper here. It doesn't seem to be in the package, but for the same period this year, fall 2023, the number has changed almost insignificantly from 19,914. It's actually 19,913. So enrollment from an undergrad perspective is fairly flat, fairly stable. So for our budgeting and our forecasting of growth, we're going to hold that number as we do our budget process for next year. And we need to know that number because that ties into our estimate of the fees that we believe that we'll receive for the next year. So based on those numbers, we'll keep everything flat. The university announced a few weeks ago that applications to Laurier have increased the most ever. They're up well over 4% from the previous year, but that doesn't always translate into acceptances. And we don't want to overestimate what our student enrollment will be, because we'd rather get additional fees than the other way around when we build our budget. So I think those are all the documents that I have, and I'll open it up to questions.
Okay. I'll open it up for discussion. Director Turner, oh wait, actually don't. Are there any questions in the Waterloo boardroom? Or sorry, in the Brantford boardroom? We'll start there and then we'll work our way inside. No questions? Question in the Brantford boardroom, please go ahead.
In terms of the surplus that you're expecting for this year, are there any ideas yet kind of where we're gonna throw that extra money towards, or is that still in development?
That would still be in development, and it really ends up being determined later in the year when we have a better idea of what that number looks like more concretely. But at some point, we will bring something forward to the board around what we would like to do with that number. Typically in the past, some of it's gone into reserves, health and dental reserve, or a general reserve. Some of it's gone to student grants or bursaries. Some of it's gone to capital projects. As you're all well aware, we're doing a big refresh in Wilfs. So we should probably set some more money aside for that project. But we will bring that forward for sure at a later date.
Okay. And then just a follow up on the undergrad percent, or the total undergrad not really changing that much. Do we, it might be kind of wild speculation, but do we expect that to kind of continue for, say, the next 5 years, or kind of what does that tell us about how the Laurier's future, and kind of how does that affect us?
Yeah, I don't expect
thrown into one.
Yeah. So, and maybe Phil can add to this, but on the Waterloo and Brantford campus, my expectation over the next 5 years would be some very slow growth and around those two campuses. Primarily, I think, as we're tapped out for space is one of the issues. So slow growth there, but as you're aware, we're starting up in Milton this fall. So there'll be, I think, Phil, is it a couple hundred students this year with potential to grow over the next 5 years. So any growth, any significant growth at Laurier, I would expect would be on the Milton campus. And we would therefore need to plan accordingly, because obviously the student union needs to have a presence there.
I just want to address that very quickly. So there is room for a lot of room for growth on the Brantford campus. There is room for growth on the Milton campus. The initial class is designed to be around 150 students, although they had nearly 800 applications to those 150 spots. So we'll see if the university behaves accordingly in that regard. And I know that there is a committee within Brantford that is trying to get to, I think, 5,000 students and then kind of exponentially go from there. I also know that it's more of a comprehensive growth that they're looking into. So Brantford, I believe, next fall is getting an influx of master's students, which will exponentially grow the graduate student population on the Brantford campus, which will be the first real development for graduate students in maybe ever on Brantford campus. So I'm not sure they've got fewer than 50 down there now. So there's lots of room for growth there. The growth opportunity on Milton is enormous, but it needs to be a responsible growth because the capacity of the facilities that we currently have access to is pretty small. Yep. And I know that they're forecasting getting access to a brand new building, I say 2028. Eventually. I'm just gonna gently knock on wood and hold my breath while that happens. But the funding corridor for Laurier is expanded because of Milton, but the funding corridor where Waterloo is concerned is pretty much maxed out.
So, any more questions, Director Court?
Nope.
Director Sloan, did you have any questions? If he's still here.
Yep, I am. No, I do not. Yeah, thank you.
Director Russo, any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Director Hamilton?
No, not at this time.
Director Spitzeri, you have the floor.
Awesome, thank you. I just want to thank you again for coming out to visit us again. I've just got three kind of main areas I kind of want to dig into a little bit. Number one being the due to campus clubs line item, your current liabilities. Right now, you only list about 45,000 due out to clubs on your cash flow in terms of your expenses, with an expected budget of 118,000, so well below budget. Yet you list about $2.2 million in obligations to clubs. Can you just kind of reconcile all those numbers for me?
Yeah, so the number you see on the balance sheet is because we hold in our accounts and we have all the financial obligations for over 200 different clubs and faculty associations. So a number of years ago, for example, the Criminology Faculty Association in Brantford, they had a large pot of money that they've turned over to us to now hold on their behalf. So what you see on the statement of financial position is that overall obligation of money that we hold and manage on behalf of all the clubs. What you see on the statement of operations is just basically what's the expenses that we've incurred in the current year from our own organization to support the club's initiatives. So that includes the money that we give as startup budgets to each of the clubs, any costs that we've incurred to do promotions or equipment for club activities. So that's the difference between those two numbers.
Sorry, you're coming through as really tinny. No, still nothing. It's like your microphone is entirely disconnected.
Oh my goodness. Can you hear my voice?
Yeah, we can hear, whoever was just talking, we can hear you. It just seems to be the one down by.
I'm
Duncan.
like speaking into the owl microphone. I don't know what more I
Okay.
can do. Can you hear me now?
That's better, yeah.
Bizarre. I'm just trying to understand why that 45,000 is so low compared to the budget, and are clubs being given the proper resources and kind of information to access the funds that they're obligated to?
So, sorry, what budget are you referring to?
Looking at the expense line, campus clubs and faculty associations, whereby we had an actual kind of expense total of 45,600, where we're budgeting nearly. And I want to make sure that all clubs are being given the proper resources and information to access funds where they are obligated to.
Yeah, that difference there, that $73,000 difference, that's more of a timing issue. We'll get pretty close to spending that money by year end. There's when the winter semester starts, there's an additional sum given to the clubs to carry them through the winter semester. So we'll spend more of that budget. I think it was just that budget got weighted too heavily into the fall semester, and we probably should have spread more of it into the winter. So we will get close to that number by year end. But there's always the debate internally as to how much we support each of the clubs, and we will go through that again when we do the budget process in the next couple of weeks for next year as well.
Yeah, and I guess just to build off that, you did mention there were over 200 clubs. Based on that number that you give it, that's like $500 per club. Is that something that you've consistently seen as like representative of the club needs, or how does that kind of reconcile with their ability to operate and provide services for students? Did you hear that?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch much of that.
Sorry. Like, if you look at that 120,000.
Yeah, you're good now.
Core number of 220 clubs, do we think that like $500 per club is enough for them to continue to do their best? And do we think that keeping funds more centralized within SU versus kind of supporting a more decentralized approach for, you know, equitable resourcing for all different clubs? Do we think that is the best use of our funds? And do we see any kind of potential where maybe less funding is kept internal within SU and more throughout the smaller clubs?
Again, I don't work as closely day to day with the clubs, so maybe I'll turn it over to Phil or Megan to that. I know we've increased the budget every year in the last couple of years that we've given to the clubs for their base budgets, and we'll probably do that again next year, but I defer to Phil or Megan on that one.
Yeah, so, I mean, like super high level, the way that the funding works for clubs is the faculty associations get funded through the faculty specific fees that students pay, like as you know, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's.
So our student union clubs, it's a bit of a balancing act because essentially, like this is super simplified, but they come to us in the fall and they submit a proposal for their semester. Give the money, and then anything that they don't spend carries over to the winter semester, which usually results in us having to give less money in the winter semester if some of them have money left over. The way that like the VP kind of leads it down is based on like a lot of them, they submit like really eager, like ambitious requests. And some stuff they can't even spend money on, like they'll ask for like $1,000 for like team merch when we have like caps for that and stuff. So the difficulty is that we're seeing like a huge influx of clubs, specifically student union based. We're seeing less increase in faculty clubs. I think because like as a student union club, it's really easy to not have overlap with other clubs because you could really start a club about anything if that makes sense. The faculties are more restricted. That being said, we also this semester we've partnered with the student affairs office to increase funding for our clubs. So that's helping the model for the student union based clubs. I hope that helps shed like a little bit more light. I can try to answer more specific questions. Like I worked in the club for last year, so I can try to answer more specific questions, but
yeah, no, just like.
If anything else, I could redirect to Nilash if I needed to as well.
And then I guess like the big item that's on everybody's mind is the upcoming potential facility upgrade. You guys mentioned in your last meeting that would be coming out around 5.8 million. Looking at our. Sorry.
General.
Sorry, how do we expect our ability to deal with upcoming large costs considering our current? Okay. I'm just trying to understand our cash flow and our ability to deal with a large potential cost that might be upcoming, and then how a potential debt servicing would look within our current status. Looking at about a 330,000 per month in debt servicing costs, how would we be prepared to deal with that as an organization?
Right.
So you'll see, if we look at the statement of financial position, but which I've thrown up on the screen, between cash, accounts receivable, short-term investments, we're getting close to $7 million right now. And some of that is, and that doesn't even include restricted cash that you see down here, which is our health and dental reserve. So we do have cash on hand to contribute to that project. As I said before, the surplus from this year will add some additional cash that we can commit to that project. You'll also note that down in our liability section, you'll see our current debt portfolio. We have current debt of $300,000 and long-term debt of a little over $1 million. So that was at the end of December, at the end of June. So we're down to about 1.3 million in debt that we have right now. 9 or 10 years ago, we had $6.8 million in debt. So we've paid a very significantly large chunk of debt off in the last 9 or 10 years through our own cash, and haven't had too much difficulty in doing that. So I don't foresee whatever we end up having to borrow for this project that we would have difficulty in paying that down. But, you know, it's a big chunk of money. The bank is willing to loan us money if needed, depending on what that figure is. So we've got the support of the bank to help us out if we need to, what we need to borrow for the project. So between the bank, cash on hand, potential of our budget for next year, I don't foresee a problem in that whatever we end up doing would take away from anything we're already doing from an operational perspective for students. But again, we have to negotiate that final figure. So we're still working on that piece.
Okay, cool. So, and then just one last one.
Go ahead.
This is a smaller line item, but considering how much the president has done so far, I want to make sure that she's being properly supported. I noticed once again, the present cost line item is considerably below budget. Is Megan being treated properly? I don't know.
She's not spending money.
Yeah, so I'll comment on that. So if you look from an expense perspective on the president budget, there's a budget of 64,000, and to the end of December, we'd spent 31,000. What we do every year, because the budgets are being prepared just as the new president is coming in, and it's the outgoing president that typically sets the budget for the incoming president with some of their input, we'll lump sum an amount into the president's budget for special projects. And depending on what the president ends up doing, we often run under that budget, but we want to make sure there is enough budget there to support. So for example, year to date in this budget, we had 40,000 set aside for special projects, and Megan and her team have spent about 24,000 on that so far. There's an amount in the budget for travel and accommodation, and we haven't spent near that budget yet. There's a tuition pot of money set aside for courses that some of the students or student executive will take, and we haven't used hardly any of that either. So I think things are good, but I'll let Megan add to that.
Maybe that tuition piece should be
Use all the board?
increased, yeah.
Yeah, I'll also add that like
Goes against our governing documents.
a big part of my budget is rent, not a big, but like a chunk of it is the rent for the student president accommodations and residents, because we pay them rent. And then, yeah, like being completely transparent, the tuition part of the budget is $13,000 for VPs and AVPs. But my VPs are not doing a lot of courses or certificates, even though I've pushed them to like do a marketing certificate or something, but there's not a lot of uptake there, so I'll keep pushing it. But yes,
I cannot believe somebody's denying.
I feel supported. if that answers your question.
Okay, cool. All right, and yeah.
I have a couple questions, go ahead.
I just have one question before the chair takes over. With the short-term investments, what's sort of like the timeline of those being matured, and what sort of is the procedure historically of where that money goes once they've matured?
So right now, because of we're in a really unique position right now, and that interest rates are high, which if you're buying a house isn't good, but if you're buying a GIC, it's significantly better than the interest that we earn on the money just sitting in our bank account. So for the first time since I've been here in the last couple of years, we can actually direct some investments to those type of things. So because we're a not-for-profit and it's student money, we're obviously not going to invest in anything too risky. So we tend to stick to GICs, and we also take a laddered approach to that. So I'll invest $500,000 for 3 months, and $500,000 for 6 months, and $500,000 for 9 months, and so on and so on. So we always have an amount maturing every 3 months. And then what we do when that matures is we look at the interest rates that the bank is offering to renew. And if it doesn't appear that we need that money in the next 3 months or 6 months or whatever it ends up being, then we'll typically, and over the last year and a half, we've just been upon maturity or reinvesting it in GICs. I know the interest rate has come down a little bit in the last few months, but I imagine, so for example, at the end of February, I believe there's $500,000 in GICs that are maturing. Most likely we will reinvest that for another 3 to 6 months at this point in time, because we are earning pretty good interest off that.
So my question to you, which is a great segue into this, is, I mean, the president has the ability to invest in any instrument that is rated R1. Why not use treasury bills?
Mo, your mic is doing the same thing again.
The president has the authority to invest in any assets, if I recall correctly, in the ELs that is rated R1 or higher, but there's no higher to my knowledge. Why not use different types of like money market instruments rather than like locking in to a 3-month GIC? I mean, to my knowledge, there are like T+1 funds that will offer better liquidity, but also a better return on the cash. So why use a GIC with a big bank that will probably not give you something quite competitive when you can go to the open market and receive a substantially better return on investment? Just for reference, right now I'm looking at like CBIL, the ETF for the 0 to 3 month ETF for the treasury bills, and it's yielding like 4.75%. And I don't know if we're getting a 3-month GIC that's paying 4.71% back to the full stated credit of the federal government.
Yeah, that's something we can definitely look at. I can tell you though that I'm pretty sure all of the money we have invested in GICs right now is over 5%, and some of it's in the 6% range. So we did take advantage of those higher rates when they existed in the past. Whether that continues in the future is yet to be seen, but we can definitely look at other opportunities. One thing that the student union doesn't have that we could probably look at is an investment policy around what the board and we feel is what's the word I'm looking for? Appropriate to use student funds from an investment perspective, and that it's not too risky, but it's risky enough that it's giving us a decent rate of return without putting anything in jeopardy. So a policy around investment could be something that we could look at in the future for sure.
I agree with you, but we'll let Phil Champagne, the director.
I was just gonna say, the students' union having money to play with is a relatively new phenomenon, because we've been servicing our debt for so long. And every time we've had a surplus, we've made lump sum payments against those debts, which is why we're not $7 million in debt anymore.
Which is wonderful, thank you.
So I think that the opportunity to open up the discussion about what a responsible investment policy could look like, I think we would really be open to that opportunity.
I feel like maybe, I know that governance coordinator Sway has brought it over many times that we need to strike the finance committee. And by the way, we'll have discussion about that at the end of the meeting. It's been very hard to find some time. But would you be open, Director Turner, to coming to the finance committee whenever we do strike it in order to be able to create a board policy regarding investments? And the only reason I'm stressing over this is because, you know, these opportunities are fleeting. Interest rates have already come down like 75 basis points in the last 4 months. And I want to be able to make sure to, that, you know, we leave our institution well run and hopefully better funded. Director Champagne.
So I would ask if that's the scope of that committee, thinking that it's probably not the scope of that committee. So you might want to strike an ad hoc committee to look into the potential of developing an investment policy.
Actually, do you wanna? Let's actually come up with let's do that right now. Can I get a motion on the board, on the table to strike an ad hoc committee in the creation of an investment policy for the student union board of directors policy manual. Motioned by Director Spitzeri, seconded by Director Phillips. Actually, since everyone's already here, let's hold the election. Can I get some nominees? We'll call it. No, wait, let's vote on we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's vote on the motion as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, as I see none, we'll go into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? All those in favor? Director Russo?
Sorry, aye.
And the motion passes 0-0 to 11. We'll now move on to committee elections. Okay, I think by default, I'm on the committee. Can I get nominations for Director Phillips?
That's noted Director Spitzeri and Director Sloan.
Director Spitzeri and Director Sloan, do you stand? Director Spitzeri?
Have you said?
Director Sloan?
I do not, little much on the plate right now, but thank you.
Director Hamilton?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Do you stand?
Yeah.
Okay, any other nominations?
I'll nominate myself.
Do you stand?
Yeah.
All right,
I'd like to nominate Director Baldinelli.
Director Baldinelli, do you stand?
No.
Do you want to?
Okay. I'd like to nominate Director Phillips.
That's.
Okay, do it. All right, Director Shipping?
Do you know how many positions you're actually going for? Like, have you defined that? Four?
That's the default. We have 4.
We'll keep it small.
We'll keep it small and to the
Not
point.
restrictive, but.
Not unlike the university committee. All right, can I get a motion to elect Director Sloan? What else?
What if Director Mahoney wants to be on it?
She's not here.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure we can.
Just trying to be inclusive.
Okay, can I get a motion? Okay, please. Can I get a motion on the table to appoint Director Spitzeri, Director Sloan, Director, Vice Chair Rubinoff, and myself to the Investment Policy Committee? Motion by Director Phillips, seconded by Director Baldinelli. Any further discussion on the matter?
Can I just request that Director of Finance and Administration, Chris Turner, and Director of Policy Research and Advocacy, Ian Muller, be added to that committee, even just as support?
Is this an amendable, is this a friendly, okay, then, do we have to do that as an amendment?
Just for perfunctory reasons, I'll offer that amendment.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Director Baldinelli. Any discussion on the amendment as presented? Okay, as I see none, we'll move into voting on the amendment. Any opposition to the motion? Or any opposition to the amendment? Abstentions? All those in favor to the amendment? Director Russo? And the amendment passes with unanimous consent. On to voting for the motion. Any more questions on the motions as amended? Okay, as I see none, we will now move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes with unanimous consent. Wonderful. We now have a investment policy committee that we actually might have to come up with a couple different policies, one to create it as a permanent committee and the one just to create the actual policy and oversight for that. Wonderful. Last question for DFA Turner. Why did Wilfs lose $150,000?
So it's not a simple answer to that. Since coming back from COVID, it's been a struggle to get back to where we were pre-COVID. This time, if you recall, last year we lost in total over $300,000, I believe. This year, the month of January looks like it's been going to be our best month year to date. So I suspect that number will come down. But again, I think there's a multitude of reasons. There's so much competition around campus for food. It's a full service restaurant on campus, and the prices that we need to charge can be difficult to attract some of the student population. Catering is now back in swing and it wasn't before. So it's starting to come up. So that's good news. Wages have gone up. One of the things that we always struggle with Wilfs is that we want to make sure we're employing as many students as we can. And there's a high turnover of students. So we probably have a higher ratio of staff than you might find out in the community because A, we want to offer as many jobs as we can. B, we want to make it a good experience for everybody. So we don't operate in as lean a position as some other restaurants may. But that's something we're looking at to get that down as much as we can. But I suspect this year again, we'll lose money, but not near as much as what we did last year. And I think it continues to get better year over year over year. And I think the refresh, once it's been completed and in place and there's a new physical space for students to go in, I think that's going to drive a lot of activity in that spot and get it back to where it was. But yeah, it's a tough business. There's a lot of competition right now out there.
Wonderful. And I mean, that's no criticism. I would rather prioritize the experience and the student employment of our shareholders. Like that's my number one priority, and for them to have a good experience. So I feel like this loss is acceptable. The second question that I have for you is why did FNCC lose more than $400,000?
So that is driven for the most part just because of the way the budget works. I think every year to this point in time, the FNCC loses money. But next time you look at these statements, once the winter semester funding has come in, it will have moved to a surplus position. So it's not anything different, unusual this year. It's just the nature of the way that funding comes in for the Fred Nichols Campus Center fee. And until the point in time that we receive that winter semester funding envelope, it always operates in a deficit position.
My last comment with regard to the surplus. What do you anticipate the surplus to be? Just give me a round number. And you can underestimate, just approximately.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
He wants to know what you estimate the surplus to be at the end of this fiscal, ballpark it.
I would say, I'll give you a range because I don't want to be held to an exact number, but I'm going to say somewhere in the $750 to $1.1 million range at this point in time.
Wonderful. If I could just offer, I guess, a little bit of guidance in regards to this surplus. I would certainly appreciate it if the board received a proposed 10K list with savings for the future facilities expense being the top priority, and then the second priority being student grants and student awards for our students being the second. If I could just offer that kind request.
Yeah, for sure. Those are already circling around in our minds when we think about what we need to do with that surplus, for sure.
When do you expect we would get the proposal for those awards and the 10K, the 10K report?
Typically they've come to the board. When would you say, Phil? Late March, early April, I think, right around the time we do the following year's budget.
Okay. Wonderful. Does anybody else have a question for DFA Turner? Okay, as I see none, I'd like to thank you, Director Turner, for coming to our board meeting and answering all of the different directors' questions. And we look forward to working with you on the investment policy ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thank you. I'll stop sharing the screen now.
All right, on to comments from me. I'd like to thank our governance coordinator and chief returning officer, Sway, for her amazing job running the election. I'd like to say that based on my own experience, she's been one of the best chief returning officers that we've had in recent memory. And I'd like to offer actually a motion to officially praise the chief returning officer for the fantastic job that she did running the election with an amazing over 20% turnout. So can I get a seconder on the motion? Director Baldinelli, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, as I see none, we'll now move it to voting. Any opposition to the motion? Abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes with unanimous consent. Thank you for your service. We certainly appreciate it. The election night went extremely well. I'm really happy to, have seen the such a competitive election for next year's board. One thing that I would like to discuss maybe today would be to have a mini board meeting, a short board meeting the week after reading week. The purpose for that would be to introduce the director-elects and have an optional peer director mentorship program where current directors could mentor the future directors for next year so that they can hit the ground running and not have as much as of a ramp-up time. What are your thoughts?
Sure, yeah.
So can I get a motion on the table to set a board meeting for the week after reading week for the...
In the agenda package, you have a section saying discussing
Oh.
February meeting times. You can do it then, you can do it now.
Okay, so we'll circle back to that at the end of the meeting before the in-camera session. And that's it for me. Any questions for me? Okay, as I see none, we will now go on to the comments from the president and CEO.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it quick. So I was gonna talk about the elections and more into that, so let's get that. Obviously, the new president was elected, which is really exciting, so now I have my replacement figured out. The week that we last met, I had a great meeting with President Mokachi with USA, like the Ontario undergraduate student alliance, to discuss advocacy priorities. That went really well. And then we also have local advocacy that week where we met with local MPs and MPPs. And since then, I've been like a lot of good follow-up meetings on the GSR's behalf. I went to Winters of Drag last week in Brantford, which was a great success. I'm starting on the Dean of Lazaritas panel tomorrow, which is my first like super big hiring panel, so that's exciting. EP applications closed last night. We have good numbers and strong applications. And EVPs closed February 18th. So once again, if you guys know any current students who'd be a fit for AVP definitely spread the word. I'm meeting with a new VP of Student Affairs, not new/old, I guess, this Thursday with Ben as well, the new president. And then I also went over my performance appraisal with Mo last week, so thank you again all for the positive feedback. Looking forward to not that many more meetings with you guys, but hopefully we'll go on.
Wow, okay.
I
Thank
mean, I'm
you.
on my way out, so
That's it.
we'll make the most of it.
Uh,
And that's all from me. And then I'm doing the Conestoga brief after Phil is.
I'm sure you've been working very closely with the president-elect in order to have a smooth transition.
Well, considering it's been 4 days and 2 of those over the weekend, I would say not a ton.
Not yet, but like you have a plan.
Of course. We did bond socially this weekend too, when we actually at the bar, so that was nice.
Nice.
You're like the Spider-Man meme, yeah. Whoa.
All right,
But yes, good plan in place and he will be set up for success for sure.
wonderful. Any questions or comments for the president and CEO? Okay, as I see none, on to executive director and CEO comments.
Not a whole bunch more to add. Again, shout out to Orlin and her team for the elections. It was a huge success. It was really exciting to see the energy in the office around getting us to 20%. Also shout out to Megan and bringing us across with the post floats, I guess. Would be the way to say it, was because we got there after the floats were gone. And then the rest of my updates are all part of the agenda package. So happy to field any questions if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for the executive director and COO? Question, regarding the Belmont.
Yes, sir.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. So it's basically making break even kind of numbers right now, so it's still trying to work some of the bumps out. I put a lot of pressure on them to kind of be open by January 8th, so they're still working out some of the wrinkles. But yeah, it seems like the Brantford community is pretty receptive to it. I was there last Wednesday at lunch. It was delicious. At the Belmont wrap, if anybody wants to know. And it's kind of a work in progress, but we're pretty happy with where we're at. Our sales on a daily basis are pretty strong, enough that we shouldn't be losing money, so that's
great.
A good opportunity. And generally speaking, it's getting positive reviews from pretty much everybody. It was shouted out at the VP Academic Town Hall today. We were very happy to hear that, even though we weren't credited with it specifically, but I'll have a follow-up meeting with Heidi next tomorrow.
Just so you know, it's not on Google Maps.
It's not on
It's
Google.
not on Google Maps, it's not on Uber Eats or like whatever, so that might be something.
So the food delivery stuff, we've got a lot of strong operational feelings on that. Those guys are criminals, in my opinion, in terms of what they charge restaurants and then subsequently charge customers. They're double dipping on where they're getting their revenue.
Yep.
So I'm not sure that it'll ever end up on a food delivery service.
Okay.
And Google Maps I mean, it's literally been a month, so we'll see where we go.
Wonderful. I'm personally, I've gotten a lot of very good feedback from Brantford students regarding the drinks available there. So just a shout out to your staff, Phil, in creating these drinks, and coming up with a menu. Hopefully the menu will continue to expand, right?
Is this place located inside the market square?
Yes.
One Market, yeah.
Inside One Market. By the way, on that note, we do plan to have a Brantford meeting, and at that Brantford meeting, would like to, have all the directors show up before. We'll have dinner there, and then we'll host the meeting in Brantford. So just.
Do you have an idea when that
So probably the first meeting or the second meeting in March.
Okay.
So if you could please try to plan around that, first meeting of March. Director Corey?
I just wanna confirm that it'll be open until then by now, because right now the hours are till 4.
So I've had a conversation with Michelle last week when I was there and let her know that you guys have interest in having an after hours thing. So as long as we plan it ahead of time, we should be able to accommodate that, yes.
For sure. So,
Then-
directors, this is your
Sorry.
notes. Your first meeting in March will be in Brantford.
So March 4th?
Well, let's just,
Far, so-
why don't we just wait till we get to that point?
Yeah, it's just like.
We might depend on.
Oh, yes.
Right?
For the second meeting, yes. Director Corey?
Follow up on that, will the restaurant be open for that to facilitate open access to the board meeting, or will it kind of how are we controlling that?
The lunch will be before, or the dinner will be before the board meeting,
Okay,
so that it's reasonable. Okay, on to President Spindler's Constable brief.
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, Mo had asked me to provide a brief on Conestoga student usage of Lori services on the Brantford campus. I don't know if you want me to skim over what I wrote, so super high level, I broke it down from the university perspective and from our perspective. So from the university perspective, the main takeaway, was that the main concern, not even concern, but the main feedback that they hear is that Conestoga students are accessing the wellness center more than ever before because of the increase of students. So I'm sure you guys all know this, but Conestoga's population has literally gone like this over the past few years, so it's been like exponential. So last semester, student affairs found themselves in a tough spot with capacity. And it kind of took the entire term, getting that term under their belt. Now they're fully staffed and they're in a much better position to support both Lori students and Conestoga students. And they made it very clear to me, the student affairs staff, that they're not hearing any delays in service from the wellness center standpoint. They have very open channels of communication. I saw Mo's reaction. If students are talking about it, it's purely gossip and they're not going through the right channels. Because the student affairs staff have told me that there hasn't been a lot of reports. But like I said, they're very open to hearing that feedback. And anything that has popped up, they have addressed in a timely manner. And I don't have the exact numbers, but there's almost double the student population at Conestoga versus Lori Brantford.
Yeah.
Obviously with what the federal government released a few weeks ago, that will probably impact our numbers going forward, but it doesn't impact our current student enrollment. And it's just been like exponential growth over the past few years. So that's kind of why we're in this situation on the Brantford campus. From our perspective, I don't know if this is the completely accurate term, but Conestoga students pay some sort of service provision fee to us. This fee directly helps fund our Safe Walk Home program. So those of you who are familiar with Foot Patrol, Conestoga students are able to use this service and engage with it. This fee does not go towards programming or any other services we offer. Conestoga students can attend some social events we host unless we are ticketing and saying Lori students only. So sometimes we have small events, like for example, we do like Brantford Bulldogs games. We did like a formal recently, and those were Lori students only because it's smaller capacity. We want to prioritize like our own students. But then, for example, if we're like having a roller rink come into the one market, and it's more like fluid, like come and go like that, we don't necessarily ticket. So I guess like the summary of this is that as these Brantford students have felt, that Conestoga students are very present on their campus, but their engagement doesn't directly take away from Lori students, and any complaints that have come from Lori students, they're dealt with directly, and any like feedback that Mo or any Brantford directors here, please encourage the students to actually bring it up to staff. Like the student affairs staff are very good at talking to students, and rather than just gossiping with each other, nothing's gonna get done in that sense unless it goes through the right channels and to the right people. So that's kind of the summary I have. I'm happy to take any questions, but.
So, one of the complaints that wasn't really represented, but may not be, of your knowledge, was regarding like the physical infrastructure. So like, if I recall correctly, last year on the SLL committee, Phil, like the SLL committee dispersed some money for like physical infrastructure upgrades, not physical infrastructure, like amenities for spaces and whatnot. That's kind of like one of the big talking points, is because now they're like double the population. Laurier and Belusu has spent a lot of student dollars on these spaces, and the Conestoga students haven't paid into any of the spaces, and they're overwhelmingly using these spaces. So like, my question to you is there any plan or any way that we could have Conestoga students pay into like the student lifetime fee so that they could benefit from the physical infrastructure changes that like we put into, and continue to be able to expand the student spaces, because they're getting quite proud of them. Any average day in one market, sometimes I can't even find a table anymore, which is saying a lot because it's a huge space.
Sure, was that a question to me directly? I mean, the answer to the question is a little bit more, like, we can't, they are subject to non-tuition protocols just the same as we are, so it's not as simple as them just going, yeah, no problem, we'll cut you a check. But we do have a good relationship with the CSI, and I know that the institution has a relatively good relationship with their Conestoga brethren, depending on who you're talking to. So we can certainly kind of start to have those conversations to see if there's an opportunity for some sort of contribution to kind of even it out. if there's gonna be funding to a space that would be open to both student bodies. But I think that probably kind of starts with the dean of students office and kind of having those conversations with them. So they are, for all intents and purposes, the ones that facilitate that partnership.
Also, would it be worthwhile to invite the dean of students to come and speak to us and maybe have a discussion around having the Conestoga students pay into funds that improve the local infrastructure?
So first of all, I always find there's a value in having the dean of students come and address the board. But I think that for the purposes of what you're looking to have done, we can probably do that offline at first until there is a solution. And then you can kind of come in at that point and talk if that's what the board wants to do.
Okay. Would the board be interested in having the dean of students come and speak to us at the next board meeting? Just generally speaking about the campus, experience on both Waterloo and Brantford? I do recall we did discuss this at the beginning of the fall term. But, is there renewed interest, is there continued interest in inviting the dean of students to the boardroom, at the next meeting? If yes, I need a motion. Director Phillips?
Propose a motion, the dean of students to come speak to the board directors at the next board meeting.
Okay, can I get a seconder for the motion? Director Baldinelli? All right, any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, just one comment. If, I know we were gonna circle back to the February meeting.
Yeah.
But if we're planning on doing a short meeting and having board elect candidates, maybe we should push it back to the first meeting. in
Yeah.
March.
We'll discuss that at the end. Director Champion?
I was just gonna suggest he's trying to clarify what technically is the next meeting. The official next meeting on the books is the one that's on reading week, which is what you're not referring to.
Yes.
So technically, the next official meeting will be the March 4th meeting,
Mhm.
but you're about to potentially have a meeting on February, whatever the heck that date is.
Okay,
So the question is,
26th.
which one of those meetings is it that you're looking for? So
I think
Yeah.
March would be better. 'Cause you're
for
have the dean come.
the dean, okay. So, I'd like to, so, okay, hold on, can we amend?
can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That we go through the motion, but let's extend an invitation for the dean of students to come and speak to the board about that topic.
Okay,
And then we will offer him an opportunity to
Okay.
pick and choose, because obviously our after hours meetings, his calendar might be full, because he has a family then.
for sure. Okay.
But 100% we can get that.
So,
If the board will.
I'd like to propose an amendment that we extend an invitation to the dean of students. Can I get a second round on the motion? Vice Chair Rubinoff, any discussion on the amendment? Okay, as I see none, we'll move it to voting. Any opposition? Abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes 0 to 10. Director Sloan. Okay, on to voting for the motion as amended. Can I get a seconder for your Director Baldinelli? Any discussion on the amended motion? To extend the invitation. As I see none, we'll move it to voting. Any opposition? Abstention? In favor?
Aye.
The motion passes 0 to 10. All right, on to direct inspection committee elections. Can I get nominees for the hiring practices paid staff direct inspection committee? We need 3. Director Baldwin, I'd like to nominate you. Director Baldwin, do you stand?
I do not stand. Sorry, there was just an issue with the microphone.
Vice Chair Rubino?
I'll nominate myself, Director Baldinelli, and that's it.
Okay, Director Baldinelli, do you stand?
Sure.
Vice Chair Rubino, do you stand?
That's a tough one. Yeah.
Okay, I need one more for the,
I nominate Director Phillips.
huh?
Come on.
Come on.
Commissioner Von Phillips.
I would like to nominate Director Hamilton.
Director Hamilton, do you stand?
I do not know.
Come on, guys. What are you doing?
I nominate myself.
Okay, Director Russo, wonderful. all right,
I'll do
we'll
it.
now move into motioning that. Can I get a motion that we appoint Director Baldinelli, Vice Chair Rubinoff, and Director Russo to hiring practices paid staff? Seconded by, motion by Director Phillips, seconded by Director Ellis. On to voting. Any opposition? Any abstention? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 0-0 to 10. On to Chief Returning Officer Constraint. Can I get nominations for this committee? Ideally, we can make it the same people so that we can have it back to back.
Yeah, I'll nominate myself.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Vice Chair Rubinoff and Director Baldinelli. Do you stand?
Yeah.
Do you stand? All right, on to, and Director Russo, sorry. Can,
Yeah, I
get
stand.
a motion? Director Phillips, seconded by somebody in the Bradford boardroom. Director Corey, on to voting. Any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes 0-0 to 10. I have no announcements to make. We would like, board meeting February schedule. So I am proposing that we meet, for a short meeting, on February 26th to, invite the director-elects to come to the board and then to have a, be able to appoint different mentors for the different, director-elects. That's my proposal. Actually, let's put it directly to a motion. I'm motioning that. Can I get a seconder for the motion? Sorry, guys. Yeah, we'll get it. Vice Chair Rubinoff, it's been motioned. Questions and comments on the motion?
Sorry, is this asking to have a meeting during the meeting period?
No, February 26th. So this would be the Monday after reading week. Monday after reading week. President Spellman?
I just wanna ask for clarification, why we can't like a new board of directors to March 4th.
Because it's gonna be longer. It's gonna be a long meeting. So I just wanna have like a short meeting and then we'll have a board social afterwards, like we did last year.
So we'll have 2 meetings back to back.
Yes,
Okay, and there'll be enough content for that to make it worth everyone's time?
yes. To my knowledge.
Okay.
And it's also good to show.
Yeah, and plus like having a light meeting is great because like that way they won't be
And Brantford is the 26th or the 4th?
the 4th. So Brantford will be the 4th. And then the 26th. Sierra Sway.
Just wanna confirm that the 19th, meeting for February is canceled and
Yes.
moving it to the 26th.
So I'd like to motion that the February 16th meeting is moved to February 26th.
19th.
Sorry, 19th moves to the 26th, seconded by Director Phillips. Seconded by Director Phillips. Seconded by Director Phillips. Questions and comments?
To Megan's point, is it possible to maybe, if we're concerned with them being there for too long in terms of like the March 3rd meeting, we're inviting them to March 4th meeting, we're inviting them to like a specific portion of it and then like specifically tailoring the.
That would, the 4th one is in Brantford. So that's why. Okay, any last comments on the 26th being good, Director? President Spellman? If you cannot attend, please send. But please send Vice President Brooke. She's a wonder to have on the board.
They're gonna be together.
I'm just thinking also because it's reading week and I don't know if we'll have time to update.
Yeah, it's just gonna be like a short meeting to get them to go through the motions and then pair,
Oh, this will be in the middle of reading.
No, it's the week after reading week.
I thought we were like doing.
Okay, any last questions or comments on the February 26th meeting?
Same time, 8:30 begin.
Same time, 8:30, please be there on time. Wonderful. We'll now go into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 0-0 to 10. We will
now move in camera for a very short discussion. Can I get a motion that we move, oh, what? Director Corey?
Is this about the thing that I sent to you?
Yes.
I'd like to push it to next week. I quickly spoke with President Spendler and she's not prepared to brief it.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll push the in-camera session to the February 26th meeting. Executive Director Champagne? Are we able to talk about the bettering brief at all? Oh, yes, the bettering brief. Please go ahead. Sorry. So as I mentioned at the last board meeting, I think we had just met with our initial meeting with the company called Bettering to do an equity, diversity and inclusion audit of the students union from top down. Attached very late. I apologize. That's definitely on me. I definitely had it escape my mind, but it is part in the board resources. It's basically an outline of what their proposal is to kind of review our policies, procedures, interview people anonymously to get their feedback, etc. I believe if I remember correctly, it's a 3-phase step that takes anywhere between 9 to 12 weeks, give or take. I've also attached a copy of the audit that they did for the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, so you can see an example of their work. And ultimately what this will do is help set us strategically in a direction to start doing better work, both for ourselves individually and as an organization in the field of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So the reason that it's coming to the board, they're not able to provide me with a direct price. They said it was going to be anywhere between $10,000 to $12,000 plus tax. They're looking at developing an USA school membership discount. So my proposal would be that we approve the spending of up to a maximum of $12,000 with the understanding that it would likely come in under that. But I also understand that if the board isn't comfortable making that decision right now, we can move on. Can I get a motion that we approve up to $12,000 contingent on receiving a report? An update on the contract? Oh, for sure, yeah. An update on the contract when it is signed, and then having it also focus on indigeneity and disability issues. Because that all
Looks like
matters,
it's-
all matters of equity will be considered. Okay, and you'll have an opportunity to talk to them directly without anybody interfering in that conversation, so. Okay.
I think we should find an equitable view to the equality of the other. I don't think we should explicitly state.
Well, yes, but it was just, looked like it was. So,
Yeah.
no offense meant, but this was just something. Can I get a seconder for the motion? Director Baldinelli, any questions or comments regarding? And then obviously, make sure that we're getting the best value that we can for.
Yeah, just a quick question, for audits of a similar nature, is that like a very fair price? Is that what, I don't know what's been done in the past, if we've used this company?
For this, so we've never used this company before. The only people that we know that have used this company before for sure are our USA partners, and this pricing seems very fair.
Okay.
And they're willing to give us a discount on that, and they're aware of what our threshold is to come to the board, so I'm very comfortable that we will come under and we'll get high quality work. Okay,
Sounds great.
wonderful. Director Corey?
Sorry, you were just a little hard to hear for a bit, so just to confirm, the motion is to allow the money so that we can enter into a contract with Bettering, subject to the benchmarks. Okay, and there's kind of the only briefing on this is just the report or the kind of proposed contract and then the USA paper?
Correct. Okay. Wonderful. We'll call that to a vote. Any opposition to the motion? Abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 0-0 to 10. On to action item summary. Directors, I'm so sorry, but we will, I've really been trying to find some time to strike the different committees that are overdue. I will work with the vice chair in order to make that happen. I promise. It's been very difficult. Wonderful. Can I get a motion that the board adjourn the February 5th, 2024 meeting? Director Phillips, seconded by Director Baldwin.
Any last comments, questions, or concerns? I'd like to thank everyone for their participation today, and their patience. It's been wonderful working with you so far. And, I will see you all on February 26th. I will call that to a vote. Any opposition? Abstentions? In favor?
Aye.